Welcome everyone to the webinar Drive Power BI Adoption with Admin Monitoring. My name is Simon, and I'll be the moderator for today. I'm really excited to be here. I hope you guys are as well, because we have some really interesting content and speakers lined up for you. Eager to dive in. Before I go over the agenda and introduce the speakers, I would first like to get some practicalities out of the way. So we're all on the same page. So there's a couple of things you should know. First of all, the Q&A. We have a lot of expertise here present with us in Jasper and Brecht, who know a lot about building data solutions. So I'd say make use of that. Make use of the Q&A section. It should be at the top in the toolbar and Teams. It should be at the top of your screen. You can answer, submit your questions. And then we'll answer those once we get a chance. I will be in the Q&A, by the way, as a moderator, so I will try to answer your questions during the session, which I probably won't be able to do. So all the questions that I won't be able to answer, we'll answer after the main presentation is done and at the end of this session. Should we miss a couple of questions because we don't have enough time, because you guys asked a lot of questions, hopefully, we will list those, answer them, and send them in an email after the session to everyone participating. So just so you know, if we don't answer your question, we will answer it, and it will be in your inbox after the webinar. The second thing that's maybe of importance is that the session will be recorded, is being recorded right now. That way you can rewatch it, you can share it. Sharing is caring, so please do so. The link will be sent over also after the webinar is done. And then maybe the third one, and the most important one, maybe important if you're already getting tired of listening to me. Everyone who stays the entire session will have a chance to win a voucher of 100 euros for AS Adventure. The reason why is because next to exploring your data, we also want to explore let you explore the world. So I guess that's why we do that. Okay, so those are the practicalities. I think I can go over to introducing the speakers for today, because they will be doing most of the talking. Let me start with Brecht. Brecht is the head of data at Describe. He can be best described, I think, as a data generalist. And before working at Describe, he worked as a consultant, as an analytics consultant, working on a lot of different projects, ranging from building data warehouses, building data platforms, setting up other data tools and platforms for customers and companies to use. And the results of his effort at all those customers is actually a very solid foundation for companies to start making decisions based on data. I guess you could say from the two speakers, Brecht is the most his technical expertise is most on the back-end side of things. So that is why we also have Jasper with us in the call. Jasper is a senior data and AI consultant at Delaware. He helps a lot of bigger and smaller companies get the most out of their data platforms through his deep expertise of Power BI on the one hand, and his experience in making sure that those self-service reporting platforms are well maintained and well governed. And the result of his actions are then valued through actionable insights, I would say. So we have a lot of expertise here up and down the data stack. Make sure you use it. Make sure you ask a lot of questions. Use the Q&A. Get the most out of this session is what I'm trying to say, I guess. If I can just, before I pass the word to Brecht and Jasper, I would just like to quickly introduce the agenda from a conceptual point of view. I won't dive into the content. I'll leave that to Jasper and Brecht. So the agenda of today is mainly structured around three main topics. So we have the first topic, or the first part of the webinar, will be all about answering the question, how can you see how your Power BI system is being used? How can you track usage? Who has created those reports? Who are your biggest consumers of those reports? How are they working together? When are they using your reports? That is going to be the first part of this webinar, will be given by Jasper. Then the second part of the webinar will be about, if you start with getting people to use your Power BI setup. Then the second part will be about if they are using your setup, how can you ensure that they are finding the right things? and that they are working together in a secure manner. And that is where endorsements will come in, some security labels will come in. Brecht will talk about those things. We will also show the Purview dashboard, which is a tool you can use within Power BI to maintain those endorsements and make sure everything runs smoothly. And then as the third part of the webinar, so we first have who, what, where, when, then how can you do it securely and make sure people find the right content is number 2. And then the third part is all about, what are the shortcomings of the tools we are going to discuss today? What are going to be your next steps? How can you scale your Power BI and your governance organization? So I guess those are going to be the main topics we're going to discuss today. I hope that makes sense. And I think there's nothing left for me to do than to say, ask questions. I'll be in the chat. I'll present them to Jasper and Brecht if I can answer them. And then for the rest, I guess, Jasper, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Simon. So let's jump right in. Maybe you have heard, maybe you haven't heard about the admin monitoring space. It's a space being created by Microsoft and is available right now for your tenant administrator. Going as a tenant administrator to my workspaces, you will find out that this, let's say, workspace is available for you out of the box. As mentioned, we have the feature usage and adoption report. We have the Purview Hub report. What we first will see is the feature usage and adoption report, and we will go over some, let's say, questions that we may have on usage, on adoption. But let's jump right in. Okay, maybe the first thing, let's open up the full screen. What do we see here in our usage and adoption report? First and foremost, you see that we have around 30 days of information available surrounding all kinds of activities. The total amount of activities, the total amount of distinct users, maybe also the total amount of workspaces and capacities that are applied here. And that's very important to know as well, is that we start from capacities and then can go through to workspaces, reports, and deeper inside of your tenant. You can find out all certain things. So on the top hand side, you find like just an overview, a line chart, maybe a trend that you can maybe see. And maybe see that here on the 26th of January that there are like peaks inside of my activities. Maybe I want to find out more about it. I can click on the bar and effectively certain things are changing. Let me explain. What you see here is, for example, the most active capacities, the most amount of activities that are applied to that, let's say, capacity. Now, capacities don't really say that much to me. It could be because of your license types. I'm more interested inside of or about my workspaces. Clicking on the top hand side here on the next level inside of my hierarchy, you will find out all your reports, or sorry, your workspaces being available inside of your tenant. Clicking through, of course, I will find out activities happening inside of all those workspaces here. My next step here is about my most active operations, right? Power BI takes up a lot of operations, exporting, creating, editing, viewing, are all things that are being kept inside of your Power BI tenant. What I see here is that my view reports, or there are a lot of reports being viewed, and I have 16 activities available. What I could do is, of course, look into what are my lowest level activities and also find some insights there. To the right-hand side, and this is something strange, the user type, right? To the right-hand side, you see the most active users, but it's also a bit hidden, right? Again, you will find the user type. Is it an internal user or is it a guest user or an external user? Now, I'm again more interested in finding out, let's say, the effective user. So again, I press on my next level in the hierarchy and I will find out all the users that are doing some activities. Looking into the full 30-day activity log, I will find out that there are a lot of users performing things on this tenant. So this is the general overview, right? It's very simple, but you can already find some operations. You can even filter down on certain things that are really important to you, a certain report that you want to check, a certain data set, a certain operation that you want to filter upon. And it's all possible to check it right here. So it's dynamically changing to the way you like it. But of course, to me, it's a bit more important to jump in and check on what are the most, let's say, valuable questions here. I don't want to jump in here and say, okay, this is nice, my trend is going up. No, I want to really ask myself some questions and go through this dashboard in an effective way. So I have prepared 4 questions. My first question would be, what is happening inside of my tenant? And you have seen what I have been doing here. I can click on, for example, a trend that is going up. So to say I see that there are like 41 activities and it's a bit more than I have expected before. So I can click here and drill through just like I did before. But what I can do furthermore is really look into what is really happening with more attributes that you have here in this activity overview. Because it's very limited. You can only see workspaces, you can see some operations, some user information, but it's a bit limited. So the analysis step here will aid you within this graph is really to, and this decomposition tree is really to find out more information. For example, what is happening on the 26th of January? I can check there are a lot of reports being used, and it's being used by Brecht a lot of the times. But what I can do as well is just go back and on all attributes that are available, I can further go down into my, let's say, attributes that I have and see which activities are applied. Now, the second question would be, and I will remain here, where are my activities happening? Because I have seen that you could find that as well, based upon workspaces, but maybe I want to check it out on report level. So I can begin here again as well. I want to find out more about an operation. My operation here would be my view reports. And I want to find out, where are people really using Power BI? On which reports are they using it? What are my top 10 reports? So in this case, I can just click my plus icon. I can go to a certain workspace, for example. And on that workspace, I can find out which reports are being used the most by using, for example, the item name. And this is how I can find or use the analysis step to really drill through to what I really want to find out, right? If I want to find out the top 10 reports across my tenants, I just get rid of my workspaces here, which you can just drill through and just find out all my different reports. Based upon here, I can go into that report and find out the users that are really using those reports, right? And so the drill through is really nice to see or nice to use. So those are 2 really basic questions that you could do with this activity overview and analysis overview. Now, you see that you have day data and it's maybe not enough. Maybe you really want to find out more and really want to find out when, on which time, really 2 p.m., 3 p.m. is this happening. And I have some use cases here. My first use case could be, for example, I see an operation run email subscription and then my governance, really, this is not really what I want to use. I don't want people to, export PDFs, so to say, to my organization. I really want to keep it inside of my tenant, inside of Power BI, right? So my question would be, when are people doing or using email subscriptions? I click on run email subscriptions, and I definitely can already find out it's being used by Bart. Bart is really here, not the culprit, of course, but is maybe doing something that is not inside of my governance framework. And then I can click through and say, okay, dear Bart, I will also find out what is really happening, on which time are you really emailing those PDFs, those reports to a certain person, right? And at that point in time, I can check how maybe the governance. It's okay. For me that's good. It's Bart. I'm really certain that Bart is doing well. But you could also check what is the time really of that schedule, because it could be that that schedule is being planned while the data source is not really refreshed, and maybe people are getting data, are getting a PDF, an export, which is not really. How must I say that? It's not the latest data that's inside. So that's a risk, but it's of course based upon your own governance. The last one would be who is driving certain things. And imagine there is a new governance rule that we want to put in place, but we have an organization, and the organization is really spread throughout different countries. And to me, I have a feeling for my colleagues, my really, let's say, colleagues inside of the region, but I don't really have any feeling with people outside of my region. But I do want to find out the key users. I do want to know who is who and what is the group of people that are my key users inside of another region. In that case, I really need to find out who is doing certain operations that the key user is normally doing. So in that case, I can go to operations, go to create dataset, create report, edit dataset. And I quickly find out that my people that are really doing certain things are Brecht, Alex, Peter, right? Those three people are really doing operations that I consider as these are key users. And maybe I can work with those people, with those, let's say 3 people, but let's say in a bigger organization, you could say with the top 10, top 20 people, and really check with them the governance rule that we want to apply. Is that really good for you? Do you have any other questions? So with this dashboard, I can really find out my community. And that's not always fixed. You always have certain people that you tend to go to, but you don't always know your community. This is how you can find out. Even more, you can then indeed say, I want to also find out what will be the impact of applying certain governance rules. For example, naming conventions. Then I can also check the workspaces that need to be changed. Okay. Now, to me, what's most important is really getting that usage going, getting the adoption going. So governance is really important, but you also need a framework, an adoption framework, so to call, to get a successful implementation of your Power BI. But also it could be on other tools. So maybe that's a question to Brecht. What would be some drivers, some key influencers for adoption? Really inside of Power BI, but it could also be done inside of other tools, like Describe. Do you have any answers?
That's an important question, Jasper. Mostly, I always give the advice to start with a high impact but low effort use case. So I would say try to find a report that you know that will be used a lot, but that you know it's not complex to build. That way you will have a positive feeling, and the people inside your organization will start to trust the tool, which is very important. As a second one, I would say identify your key users. So they will be the backbone of your organization, of your reporting implementation. They will help you define use cases, but the most important one, they will also become an ambassador of your platform. Mm-hmm. As a last suggestion that I would give is good training and support are very important. You have to let your users know where they can find everything, how they can use everything, but also if they find an issue, how they can log it. This will avoid frustrations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right there, Brecht, and also the example that I gave about the community. It's maybe something that you have a second iteration of your adoption, and in that case you could find it out with this report who is really your community, who you need to talk with. So yeah, good examples. Thank you. To wrap up, maybe 2 things. First and foremost, let's say you want to get further with this. You want to check certain things yourselves. You want to explore your data. Then there is a new feature inside of Microsoft or Power BI, which is explore this data. And it's a really nice tool because you don't need to really make reports. You can just make a quick visual. Let's say I want to find out for the operations, who are my users there? And let me add my email address. And I just put it right here. So what I can do now is find out for every single operation who is really the users that are implementing or using those activities. So it's a quick check. You don't need to use the flow of the report, but you can find it out yourself. You can even save this Explorer tab, and you could open it up in a new tab. Based upon this or more information around this, you can find online, but it's a nice thing, and you can definitely, let's say, implement better reporting for your own insights. Now, I've talked about those questions. Let's say Microsoft can give you those answers, right? For example, where are there some trends? And I use this Get Insights feature where there are automatically anomalies being created by Microsoft with AI, but it's an AI feature, where there are anomalies being shown and there are some trends being shown, right? Maybe you see a certain trend popping up, and yeah, you can even explain that trend by clicking on that board. You can directly see, are there some explanations there? Yeah. So Microsoft is really giving you some extra features to really find out some insights yourself. For example, some trends that can be explained by certain users being there, certain reports that are really implied. So there are more report views, for example, and Power BI is really helping you with the Get Insights feature, which is also available for all your reports. So get into that, let's say, AI feature and check it out. So I will now give the word to Brecht. So Brecht, please allow you to share your screen, please.
Thank you, Jasper. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it. So I guess the rest as well.
Okay,
Yep,
perfect.
thumbs up.
Thank you very much. So I first want to go over endorsements. So when you are talking about data governance in Power BI, endorsement is something that you cannot leave behind. So first, I just want to explain what endorsements are about. So endorsements are actually a vote of confidence. They make sure that the people who are using your reports know that the reports they are using have reliable content. It is really meant for those content items. I'm talking about apps, reports, data sets, to make them easy to find, use, and reshare. For example, a good tip that I would always give is when you use the best practices of embedding your reports inside an app for your end users to only have to go to the app and find all their relevant reports, that app you should endorse. This makes it three main things: searchable, collaboratable, and it is content trustworthiness. First of all, searchable. Why does it make it better searchable? It is because it is promoted in your search results by Power BI. It is even displayed on your overview page. Collaboration. Why? Because content who is highly regarded by peers is more likely to be used and to be collaborated on top of that content. This promotes knowledge sharing in your organization, which is very important. And then as a last one, content trustworthiness. As I said, it is a stamp of approval saying we have seen this report, a lot of people are using this. You can rely on this to make data-driven decisions. There are two ways of endorsement. So we have the promotion and the certification. Promotion is more of a self-service concept. So every content owner saying, for example, a key user is able to promote a report saying, hey guys, I use this quite a lot. I think this is a very interesting report, and you should also be possibly looking into this if you are looking for this type of information. So it's actually a way of collaboration into your self-service organization. And the tag here, as you can see, is the tag that a promoted report gets. Then on the other side, you have a more strict one. It's being certification. And that is really, you need the rights. So only the authorized reviewers are able to give a certification stamp, where you say, this is really a quality report. We check the data and we know that you can trust whatever this report or data set contains. And this is something that we typically see in an IT governed environment. What you also could have is a hybrid environment, that you have that you let your key users build reports. And once you know that there is a lot of traction on those reports, then you are looking to make it certified, giving even more that stamp of approval. So then there is also an option to make it discoverable. In my opinion, making it discoverable is a very important one, because if you don't make it discoverable, you are losing one of the greatest powers of the endorsements, being the searchability, the discoverability. As a last thing that I want to mention here for endorsements is it's not because you are making those assets discoverable that everybody can see those assets. It means that if you open the report and you don't have access to that report based on your permissions, then you won't be able to see the content inside of it. You just know, this report exists and I can ask access to it. And a tip that I would like to give you there is, if you're giving the option to request access, is to add guidance. Because normally, if you don't add guidance, the default by Power BI is that the content owner will receive an email, which is mostly not the structure that you want in your organization. For example, let's say that the way you work in your organization is via a Jira ticket, then you can specifically say in that access request box, make sure to make a Jira request and handle this procedure. That's how we would do that. Next to that, we have sensitivity labels. And in order to explain sensitivity labels, I actually would like to tell a story about it. Assume that I am a team lead and that in order to do my job, I need to check my HR report every month. But I come to the need that I have a specific analysis to make, which is not included in the report. So what I do is I go to my HR manager and I say, would it be able to get an export so I can do my own analysis in Excel? If the HR manager has no idea and he just gives me an export, it's actually a huge loophole because I get all the data, meaning that I don't get only the data of my team, but I will be able to access the data of the whole organization. That is where sensitivity labels comes in. So it's a way to avoid making mistakes on an export, because you are able to mimic your Power BI permissions in an export. And that means if you export it to an Excel or a PBX file, those encrypted sensitivity labels will still be applied. The only downside, which is of course something that we can't handle, is CSV exports. But that's normally not a very known use case to export CSVs to do an analysis. It would mostly be Excel exports. Something interesting to mention as well for sensitivity labels is the inheritance. So they are inherited by nature, meaning, for example, you apply a sensitivity label on a data set. If you build on top of that data set a report, then the sensitivity label will be inherited. So that is basically the theory. Now I want to show you how you can check those things in Purview Hub. So if everything is right, you should see the Purview Hub screen.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Simon. So what we can see here is a quick overview of our reports. Which items do we have? How many reports, how many data sets, how many dashboards? What we often see at a customer is that they have a hard time to give an estimate of how many reports they actually have in their platform. Here you can easily start to do some analysis, see how many reports I have and how many of those reports are endorsed. Also, very interesting is to see which are your active users. Here you can really identify your key users per workspace, and you can guide people towards that person as a key contact. Lastly, what is very interesting on this hub is that you can see which workspaces are last modified. For example, I can see that my Dynamics Manufacturing Analytics workspace is only modified since 2022, meaning that is already a hint that that workspace would be idle. Maybe Jasper, is that something that you see quite often at a customer, that they have idle reports and idle workspaces?
Yeah, of course, it's something we see quite a lot. People are really going places to implement and to get self-service, for example, going. But again, also in the dashboard you saw before, we are really focusing on a lot of activities and the amount of activities certain, let's say, good reports are having. But it's evenly important to check our workspaces, our reports, our data set being used, because it's only clutter. It's making your tenant full and it makes you just a bad governance. So yeah, try to set up reporting, try to think about also those reports that are not being used, and maybe just have a quarterly review on top of that. Get to your key users, say to your certain domains, or say to your domains, to your regions, say to them, please clean up, because we see a lot of, let's say, workspaces not being used anymore. So definitely.
Yeah. And actually, it's just a waste of your storage on the one side. And as you already mentioned, it's just making your tenant chaotic, harder to maintain, harder to find your relevant reports.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. On the other side, you have the endorse report. And what we can see here we can actually have an idea on how many reports and data sets are being endorsed, either promoted or certified. And if you, for example, are in a hybrid solution where you have self-service trying to make certain reports IT governed because they are used a lot, then I would say you can have a really good starting point by seeing, those are my promoted reports. You can dive into their usage as how Jasper mentioned it, and those you could identify which ones you could make certified. That's a very interesting one. Then another one here is endorsement per workspace. Let's say you would have your workspace is organized by domain. Here you could really check which domain are endorsing a lot of reports. While endorsing reports could be a hint of saying, they are implementing a good data culture. And based on that, you could make appointments, interviews with those people in that domain to apply the same principles on other domains. That's it around the most important parts of the Purview Hub. Then I would like, because we are almost short in time and I don't want to take time away from the questions, I want to share the shortcomings. So here we have the shortcomings that we think that is still a lagging in admin monitoring. First of all, there are no tools to boost your data literacy. What do we mean with that? Is you have no shared glossary, so nowhere where you can have a place to gather your definitions, to streamline if you are using the same definition as your colleague. So we are talking about the same definition in our reports. On the second one, there is no option to properly document reports. What we currently see at a lot of customers is that they make an extra tab in their report where they start by documenting that report, which is already a good step into the right direction, but that documentation is not searchable, hard to maintain, so there is no single place where they can find it. And then as a last one is that you can't ask questions or you can't really tag issues inside your report. So you always have to go to another platform to say, I have a question about this. How can I work on this report? Then as a second one is limited discoverability. If you do a search, of course, you only search through the assets of Power BI, which doesn't leave you with where it comes from until your report, but actually only tells a small part of the story. And then also the search capabilities of Power BI are not very advanced.
Mm-hmm. Maybe some other shortcomings there. maybe more on the feature usage side, we do see that it's just limited to 30 days. So that's maybe something that Microsoft will enhance in the future, is effectively that 30 days limit. It's hard to effectively be compliant, of course, throughout the year, for example, or do an audit throughout the year if it's only 30 days. And it's also a bit difficult to find trends. I have talked about those get insights. Of course, a trend being applied on 30 days compared to having it on, for example, your 5-year, let's say, activity loss will be different. So that's important. You have limited insights on those inactive artifacts. So the report is really focusing on inactive artifacts, or sorry, active artifacts. It's not really focusing on inactive and cleaning up artifacts. And it's a bit limited in admin insights. You don't have like more information on data sources, on licenses, and that's a bit a pity, but it could be that Microsoft will enhance that in the future as well, So that's it for the shortcomings. Let's jump into the Q&A.
All right, cool. Thanks, Brecht. Thanks, Jasper. Okay, yeah, there's a couple of questions that have been asked. We can go through them one by one and see how far we get in. So the first question that has been asked, I think, Jasper, that's one for you. You mentioned that we cannot follow up on licenses. How could we do that if we have the need?
Yeah, so on licensing, there are a few options, of course. You can effectively go into your license, let's say, tab within Azure, but of course, an admin, it's not really that insightful. So then we are talking about a solution, of course, and we have been working at our team, so to say, to have those insights also available. Like licenses, like data sources, and also have like a history of activity loss also being made available. So yeah, we have some possibilities to give more insights on those licenses, on data sources. So yeah, in that case, contact us, because yeah, and it's not available right now, made available by Microsoft.
Okay, great, awesome. The next question, Brecht, I think is one for you, since you work at Describe. How can a data catalog help with making reports more discoverable? Because when I think about discoverability, I intuitively think of data catalogs. So that's the question.
Yep. I would say you collect your items in an easy-to-use search interface. So what you don't have in Power BI, in a data catalog, you mostly collect all your assets and you have an intuitive search experience. And also at Describe, we have the philosophy to make everything discoverable. So it doesn't mean that if you cannot access a report, that you are not allowed to know that that report exists. If you have in the future any needs that you would like to access that report, then you know it is there. A second one is classifications. So you could tag your assets based on domain or based on process, and those will make it easier to find. And then as a last one, I think you could link your definitions or metrics to your reports, where you could actually dive in from a functional perspective instead of a technical report perspective. Because as a functional person, you just want to get a response on this metric. Where can I find this? Via a data catalog, you can easily link your reports to your metrics, and via that way you can go in via the other direction.
All right, awesome. I see a question here coming in, Jasper. I see a couple of questions about the user activity dashboard, I think. The first one is the question that the person thinks that they are only working when the reports are viewed within the workspace. Is that correct? And do we see the usage when we distribute reports via the apps, is the question.
Yes, it's a good question, Simon. It's not only the workspace view, so you can effectively search for all views, so to say, and there is like a filter available, which it's called distribution method, which gives you the separation between app, between workspace, and even there are activities that you could use to check where our reports, for example, exported, where our reports, for example, analyzed by an external, let's say embedded portal, for example. So that distribution method really gives you a hint. That's also not available inside of the dashboard right now, so you don't really have, let's say, the knowledge on that part. But again, there are solutions, and the solutions are there. We have some solutions ready to also implement those activities with a bit more insights on what is a report view and what is a app view. So yeah, there are options to find out.
Okay, and maybe a follow-up question there. What Power BI permissions do you need to use that feature? Is it for Power BI Pro users or something else?
So that's important to know. The Explorer data feature, which was a feature that was also shown, that's a Power BI Pro feature. Now the admin monitoring feature as a whole, the whole set of let's say reports that we have shown, it's only available as an admin, and an admin normally also has licenses, or has normally a pro license or whatever. So you really need to be a tenant admin. So it's not really about licensing. It's more about, yeah, do you have permissions on the full tenant? So it's limited to admin tenant, let's say administrator, so to say.
Okay. Maybe time for one or two more questions, and then we're going to have to wrap up to respect everyone's time. I see here, can we export the reports you guys showed and house them internally to overcome the 30-day data limit? Daily snapshots, for example.
You could export it, of course. It's not really activity loss. So to give you a heads up there, Microsoft really gives you a suite just like a report. The data could be exported, but then you also think about, okay, where would you export it? And it's not really it's hard to say, okay, this is all attributes that I would need. So the data set that is behind it and the data that's in place, it's very limited. Do you want to find out more? Then there is there is an option, that is called activity loss, or the REST API of Power BI, which you can find out, let's say, all the activity loss of the 30 days, and then you could place it, for example, into a database and so on. And that's also a thing that we have been doing before, is that we already have like a historical database in place to get the report going that's a bit further in time. So there are options, but then you need the REST API for it, or the Power BI REST API for it.
Okay, cool. I think because we're already a minute over time, but we do have a couple more questions, but like mentioned, we'll just answer them in an email after the webinar. I think we can wrap up. I'd like to thank everyone for their attention and hope you learned something. I know I did. So thanks, Jasper, and thanks, Brecht. I hope to see you soon in one of our next webinars. And thanks for your attention. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.